My name's Chris Coyer. I'm at Chris Coyer on GitHub and Twitter and stuff. Yeah. I do some stuff on the internet. I have a blog and a podcast and a web app and stuff just to like, who's this guy talking to me on, so he doesn't know anything. I wrote a book about WordPress one time. Yeah, it was translated into Korean. That was pretty cool. So yeah, I don't know, I have something to do. Well, we're going to talk about simple stuff that you can do. So not this like, I don't know, this is going to be complicated. There is like complicated stuff you can do to make websites faster. We're not going to do those things. There's lots to talk about web performance today. We're going to do the simple ones first. Keep it easy for our 8 a.m. brains. When I was putting together this talk, thinking about what should I talk about, the simple stuff, I talked to some colleagues of mine. Paul Irish is a cool guy, lives around here, works for Google, does some cool stuff on the internet, including stuff about web performance. And he's like, I have some thoughts on that. I have this cool email thread that I had between myself and this dude named Billy Hoffman of Zoomph, which is like a performance something. It's like a consultancy or app or something. And he's like, Billy has some big thoughts on web performance, and like when he's first consulting with a with a company to decide what they should do, they're like, I want you to take the easy wins first. You know, this is like the criteria for deciding what you're going to work on to make your website faster. One, those things that we choose to work on should have a good to awesome perfectum performance, not micro stuff, big stuff. Number two, the thing that we choose, a single person can do without coordinating with their whole team. You don't have to like set up a 2-month sprint and you know, like do hard stuff. It's just easy. A single person can do it. It doesn't require a complex process. You don't need your DevOps guy to write a script to do a thing that does another thing. This is easy stuff and you don't have to babysit it. In other words, it's a change that you can make that doesn't require ongoing maintenance. So these are like the criteria when we choose the things that we're going to work on. This guy spoke at WordCamp like twice in past years, and he's like he's the web performance guy. Good, smart man. Everything he writes about, he's got books. Every post on his blog is about web performance. Guy knows it in and out. He has a rule called the 80-20 rule, which is on average, 80% of the time it takes for a website to load is front-end stuff. 20% back-end, 80% front-end. So what does that mean? If you ever used like Chrome or WebKit or whatever, and there's the WebKit inspector, all the major browsers have some kind of web tools, but this happens to be the Chrome one. It has this thing when you like go to the network tab, it has this network waterfall chart thing. So those little multicolored nuggets are like files that it takes a website to load, because websites are made of files. Did you know that? So the 20% is that little blue one at the top. That's basically like your HTML file that has all the stuff in it for your website. That's back-end stuff. You know, the server had to cough that thing up and it sent it to the browser. Then the browser reads through that thing and finds other stuff that it needs to do that. So the rest of this whole network waterfall chart is basically front-end stuff. It's stuff that front-end developers think about. Yeah, and it's not this tiny little thing. Often websites are made of tons and tons of files. Keeps on going. So that, which we had to move, so it's all that. That's the 80%. So performance rule, 80-20, mostly front-end stuff when you're dealing with speed. I looked at a website recently that had 117 requests on it. The page weight was 7.81 megabytes, which is crazy. We're websites aren't that much, but we should call them out. Hashtag hot drama. It's like a radio, but it's missing a vowel. It took 4.59 seconds to load the page, like on broadband. I know that's kind of irrelevant-ish, but of that time, of the time span it took to load the homepage of that site, 0.16 seconds of it was back-end stuff, and 4.43 seconds of it was front-end stuff. So it was more like 397. Steve looked at the top 10 websites in the world, and it was more like that percentage. He took 10 from the middle of the pack or whatever, and it was more like that. Anyway, you get the point. It's not a hard 80-20, but it averages out across all websites to be about 80-20. The point of that is being within this criteria that we already covered. If you're picking something to work on to make your website faster, probably front end. Unless your website is down, and then it's probably back end. But otherwise, yeah. Okay, so here's the plan. We're going to cover 4 things. I know it said 10. That was a weird miscommunication thing. It's really more like 4. So sorry if you're like, where's the other 6? I'm pissed. Number 1, the first thing we're going to do is make sure that we have HTTP compression turned on our website, otherwise known as gzipping or deflating. We're going to cache things, which we'll cover what that means. We're going to losslessly optimize our images and combine CSS and JavaScript. These are big things that have big performance benefits to doing. Yes. Number 1, turn on HTTP compression. When we were like coordinating this talk and stuff and emails were going around, Matt saw my slides and he was like, Most hosts do this automatically, but some don't, or what. Anyway, here's what it is. I'll cover that in a second. You could have a file, and and your browser needs it, so it traverses the internet, and it goes to the browser, and the browser uses it. That's like the simplest possible way that could go down. Or you could gzip it or deflate it, in which case the file on the server LAN gets deflated, and that deflated file traverses the internet, and the browser expands it and uses it. Meaning it's easier and quicker and faster to transfer a deflated file than it is the original file, right? So that's just always better. It's just always better to do that. The compressing and expanding of it, the little more server weight might take 0.0001 seconds or something to expand it, but it's just an easy win, and it reduces the size of what transfers to get your website to display like enormously. I want to do that. Everybody should do that. That's a no-brainer win. How do you find out if your website is already doing it? Go to gzipwtf.com and type in your URL and find out, and it will tell you if you're doing it or not. You click it in and it says, cool, all those resources, those were served with gzip. You're doing a good job. If you're not doing a good job, how do you do this, right? Well, one of the ways is, this is like the no-brainer, just go, get the code, put it in the thing and do it, right? Like I'm trying to give you tools that are like just easy, quick things. Go to html5boilerplate.com, click the tiny GitHub button, which should be way bigger, and go to their GitHub repo, find the htaccess file and click it, and it'll give you all the code, which is like a set of like directives for your Apache server to use. If you're running WordPress, probably Apache. I know there's some cool ways to get it to run on other things. If you don't know, it's probably Apache. Scroll down to the point where it says gzip compression and grab all that code, go into your environment where you write your code to make WordPress sites, find the htaccess file, which you for sure have if you use any kind of permalink structure in WordPress, because it needs that file to like do its thing. There's probably some WordPressy stuff in there already, and just paste it in the gzip stuff. So it tells Apache, serve with the headers that tell the browser to hold on to and cache these files. If you, I was gonna say that's like if you're like the Go commando type or whatever, like the WordPress built-in editor thing, if you go to Appearance, something, there's like a thing where you can edit WordPress files, I'm pretty sure, like your own theme files, but you can't edit the htaccess for whatever reason in there, at least I couldn't. The WordPress Yoast SEO plugin, which is kind of awesome anyway, has that thing, and you can edit the htaccess file right in there if you're like a Go commando type, which you shouldn't be, but if you are, you can do it that way. That's the sledgehammer approach, kind of, because it's like, here's the HTML5 boilerplate, there's the code for it, put it in there and it will work. So it has a bunch of stuff in there that like make it work on like any old crappy server and weird versions and stuff. The more hot knife approach is to like look at what, first of all, or if you know that you're not, go to your web host. Like Media Temple doesn't have this on by default, but they have extensive documentation on how to turn it on, and it will walk you through the idea. Then it's like there's less code. You got to think of that htaccess file. It gets like read and interpreted on every page load, kind of. It does, I think. So the more that's in there, the slower. Anyway, gzipping, easy win, can take file sizes way down, make your website load way faster. 2, cache stuff. There's 2 kinds of cache, browser cache and server cache. Browser cache is like the server's like, hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of files, but you should probably hang on to a bunch of them. And then if that's already happened once, the browser's like, I already got a couple of those. Don't even send them down, dude. I got them right here. So that's cool. It doesn't have to traverse the internet. It just immediately has them, which is way faster than getting it from the internet. That's the core tenet of browser cache. And server caches, if you have like a WordPress blog, it's like there's a blog post and a bunch of comments and then like popular posts up here and like the weather or something down here. And those are all things that need database calls and stuff going on. So instead of like all that stuff, you can just make that request once and make a static file out of it and just serve that, which is way faster. I'm not going to talk too much about the server stuff because remember, focus on the front end. But if you're into the server cache thing, the W3 Total Cache plugin is totally rad to install it, and it does that, and yes, faster. But for browser cache, which you're focusing on more, what you got to do is like set expires headers, they're called. Like the server's going to send down a CSS file, and you're like, browser, hang on to this file for like a year. Just leave it in the cache. That way, the next time that page loads, it's like, already got it. Doesn't even have to go get it from the server. Fast. Cool. But you have to tell the browser to do that by setting these expires headers. How do you do that? Go to HTML5 boilerplate, click the GitHub button that's too small, click the htaccess file, scroll down to the point that says expires headers, and there's all this stuff. This is verbose. Again, this is kind of the sledgehammer technique to getting this to work. And the big thing to know, here's the example. Where here, like, if it's a JPEG, hold on to it for a month. Don't ask me again for that JPEG. It's probably not going to change. CSS and stuff does the same thing. The thing to know about that is if you do this and then go change the CSS file and push up the change, somebody else visiting your website, the website will be like, I already have that file. Don't worry about it, dude. So they won't see the change. So it's up to you to break the cache. This is the exchange. Yo, browser! You can hold on to these files. You might need them later. And the browser's like, fine, like it just will do that. With this, I feel like this is like ancient philosophy. The fastest HTTP request is one that is not made. It's like, of course, nobody knows who said it, but that's the Steve Souders post. So it's up to you to like break that cache then. And kind of the easiest way to do that is just to be like, oh, my CSS file is version 1. I'm going to make a change and send it to the server. You have to just like put v2 there so like the browser doesn't request that same file again. You can put a random thing there, but that's not good because then you're not using any cache at all. It's better to kind of manually handle this in some way. And if you want to get a little fancier with that in the slides, which will accommodate anywhere you watch this video in the future, that's a fancy way at the bottom, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, number 3, we're cruising right along, right? Losslessly optimize your images. This is kind of a big deal because, yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Just hashtag hot drama. Let's call out a website that's doing it wrong. In the file menu, you can go up and go File, Save As, and save a website. Nobody does it, but you can, And you get that folder full of resources for this thing. I did that for southbysouthwest.com, and I found there's 1.7 megabytes full of images that made that file, okay? This is really awesome Mac development software. If you've never heard about it, check it out. I'm going to cover some other alternatives, but just so you know, I took that folder then that I file save as of southbysouthwest.com, and I dragged it onto CodeKit, and it found all the images in it. This is one of the cool things the software can do. And I selected all of them, and I hit Optimize, and it took 1.7 megabytes of images, and losslessly, meaning they look exactly like they did before, turned it into 1 megabyte of image. We saved 700K off the weight of this website in one click. They could have done that, pushed it back up to the site, and saved a crap load of time. Image Optim on the Mac, open source, free, does the same thing. On Windows, Ping Gauntlet does the same thing. You just drag the folder on there, hit the thing, good. Okay? Huge savings for minuscule amount of effort. And okay, so remember the fastest HTTP request, one not made? Reducing the number of requests is like the best thing you can do for web performance. So combine that stuff together. I have this theory that all websites in the whole world should either have 1, 2, or 3 CSS files or JavaScript files, and if there's more than that, you're probably doing something wrong. Number 1 being the global, like of course this applies to all pages on the site, have some consistency like grids and buttons and things used everywhere probably. I mean, you'll have to make your own determination, but if your site is bigger and there's lots of distinct sections, loading a section or page-specific CSS is important, or if you have lots of distinct sections and some one-off pages, at 1 minute, seriously, put a page thing. Okay, so combining files, that CodeKit software that I showed you can do that too. So I'm writing a redesign of CSS Tricks. You can take that JavaScript file, say, I need to concatenate these 3 or 4 files and my own code, and it'll squish them all into one file. So that's pretty cool. Yay, we got through all of them. I have this thing about trolls, but we're going to call it because it's like the super fast sessions thing today. So I'm calling it. There was a thing about funny and scorpion, and there's a thing with the thing. Let's do this part though. Let's group pinky swear that we are going to, if we're the people in charge of this stuff, turn on HTTP compression, cache stuff, losslessly optimize our images, and combine CSS and JavaScript in our files and our websites, or we'll be way faster, and it's really easy. Thanks, guys.
Nice work, getting it all in. How many slides was that? Quite a lot, right?
55.
55 in 15 minutes? Awesome. Yeah. If you're speaking, you will be cut off if you exceed 15 minutes. Who has a question? There's so much there, you must have questions. There's one here.
Hi, I have a question about the optimizing the images. You said you take them after the website is already up, and
That was just like to demonstrate it, kind of.
Okay.
And your project, you know, like, I don't know, you have a WordPress theme or something, and in that theme, there's probably a folder called images, right?
Yeah.
Just like go to it, grab it, drag it on CodeKit or ImageOptim or whatever, hit the button, and send those files back up to the server, you know? It's like
So so like the Photoshop save for web is not the same thing, or what?
No, and it's kind of like it fools you. You know, you say I'm going to save it at the perfect image quality level that's not too gross looking and whatever. It like just doesn't do a very good job. Why Photoshop can't implement these tools into their super expensive software?
Gotcha.
I don't know.
Next question. If you have a question, keep your hand up so we can bring a mic to you.
Hey.
Hey, do you know any automation software for combining the JS files or the CSS files?
Automation stuff. Well, I mean, that W3 Total Cache does some fancy stuff that you can turn that on and it will do that type of stuff. I'm sometimes nervous of those tools. I think any kind of big web framework-y thing has that. I was working on a Rails app that has like this thing that does that. I don't know. Check out W3 Total Cache. It does that auto squishing of files. I prefer having that be part of my like authoring experience rather than letting a third-party tool do it. But I don't know.
Hey,
Hopefully that's useful.
so not a question, but actually a quick comment. You made a suggestion to use query string parameters for versioning.
Yeah.
It's actually much better to put that like a hash
That's how it
into the file
like a
name.
number. That
Yes.
You know what? So you should talk to Matt about that because I had that way originally in here, and he's like, "No, query strings are
So
way
some
easier now."
cache servers don't
Like-
recognize query strings, which
Yeah.
is why we recommend
Holy
the hash.
War alert! Hashtag Holy War.
I have an answer for the guy asked the JavaScript compression. There's one that's actually ships with HTML5 boilerplate, so you can check that one out.
Oh, cool! Like a theme that already has that.
No,
Stuff.
just the HTML5 boilerplate that you were showing.
Yeah.
It comes with a compression script, I think.
Oh yeah, like their
Yeah.
build scripty thing. Yeah. Cool.
Anybody else? No. Cool. Thanks, Chris. Oh, one more. Last question.
Compressing the files is a great idea. The one thing you might run into is there's a known bug in Apache that if your page is too small and you compress it, it can blow up Apache. And so if you compress with your mobile version of your page, you might end up taking down your web server
Right,
periodically.
because the idea that mobile pages are smaller generally or some stuff. Yeah. Okay. Don't compress files that are too small. There should be some fancy setting for that.
Cool. Thanks, Chris.
Sure. Thanks, guys.